to AM Healing My Soul TV. I'm Vicky McClifty, and today I'm speaking with Juliette Power, who is the author of Juliette's Angel. Good morning, Juliette.
Good morning, Vicky.
How are you today?
Very good, thank you.
Yes.
Pleased to be here.
I love what you say in this book about you being a bit of a tearaway when you were growing up and leaving home early and that, but it seems you had quite a tragic beginning in life with your mum who committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I love how you've incorporated everything in this book. I read this book and it's just absolutely fantastic, and you're such a little dynamite.
I've exposed everything in this book.
Just going and all the travelling that you've done and trekking through Mount Everest and up to Iceland, it's phenomenal what you've experienced. And I mean, this show is all about helping people cope with grief. Did you find that travelling really helped you with coping with what had happened in your life?
I think travelling has always been an element in my life, and I feel that sometimes you do need to get out of your normal day-to-day life to see things a little differently.
Yeah.
And Mount Everest National Park definitely helped me there.
That's definitely going to the extremes.
It is.
But you were only 11 years old when your mother died. Mm-hmm. In the book, your father says, he tells everyone that it was she had a heart attack, but your mum actually committed suicide.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. My mother committed suicide when I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
I guess that he told people that she had a heart attack because telling people that your wife died of suicide, that would raise many questions. So I guess that was a protective method for him.
And you're one of how many? 10 children?
I'm one of 10 children.
Yeah.
And my mother was pregnant with her 11th child when she died.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that would have been like for your father too, like just to have actually, his wife there with all the kids and then he's all of a sudden without her. So he would be in denial, your dad. Is your dad still around?
He is, yes.
Yeah. And does he talk about it at all?
No, not really, because we grew up not talking about our mother's death.
Yeah.
After the funeral, her clothing vanished, lipsticks, wedding gown, diaries, everything went.
Wow.
And our mother was not talked about again.
Now, I think that was going back in time. So what year would that have been?
That was back in the early 1970s.
Yeah.
So that was fairly normal for that era, if you want to call that normal.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just putting up a brave front too. He was in control of everything, I suppose, with the kids and everything. As far as everyone else was concerned, that was what he was doing. But how did that whole process have an effect on you yourself? Like, did you feel like you felt really unsettled afterwards, being 11 years old and just going into puberty? Like, how did that affect you? Do you remember back what it was like?
Yes, I do. Well, as I said, after the funeral, our family then had to realign. Things had to change. Duties were delegated to us various children, as in, like, a father would take the 3 younger children to a neighbour's to be looked after through the day while he went to work and we went to school.
Right.
And then in the afternoon I would pick them up from the neighbours around the court, bring them home, cook dinner, the boys would wash up. It just became our new normal.
Yeah.
So we just adjust it. You don't like it, but you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But going to Everest, was that your idea or one of your daughter's ideas?
Well, my daughter Bonnie asked me to go trekking with her, and initially I was quite chuffed because how often do you have a young adult daughter or child ask you to travel anywhere with you?
Yes.
So I didn't really. No, that's right. So I didn't really question why. But she talked about trekking national parks in Nepal.
Yeah.
And we were debating which national park we should trek, and I was showing off, and I said, well, if I have to climb a mountain, it may as well be Everest.
Yeah. Man, that's really, as I said, that's extreme.
Yeah, but that just seemed, a feasible option at the time.
Yeah, from reading this, it was pretty difficult.
It was very difficult. I nearly died.
Because of the altitude, and it stops you from breathing properly, and bodies that were being carried down the mountain that you know that didn't make it. Just sounds phenomenal what you actually went through. But did you find that really helped you bond more with your daughter?
It was. I don't know whether I thought that I was going to bond with my daughter. I don't know whether that actually happened, because there was a bit of conflict here and there throughout the trek, because my daughter, she hadn't trained for Everest. She hadn't trained physically or whatever. I trained for over a year because, I wanted to make sure that I was in peak condition for this expedition, almost to the top of the world. And consequently, because she was young and didn't train, of course, she just virtually skipped up the mountain, and I'm puffing and heaving and panting and trying to struggle to adjust to the altitude, to the rising altitude.
Yeah. It sounds like you did a lot of soul searching though while you were climbing that mountain, and you mentioned that you hadn't really thought a lot about the death of your mum until you were on your own, isolated and struggling with the climb. And you mentioned about that you have an angel, your mother. So did you feel closer to your mum when you were climbing that mountain?
Well, really interesting things happened on the mountain. Back before my mother died, she told me that I had an angel and that the angel would protect me.
Okay.
So I don't need to believe I know. So I've carried that knowing all of my life. Although there have been times when I've doubted my angel.
Yeah.
And when I was climbing Everest with my daughter was one of those times.
Okay.
Because I realised that I had inadvertently put myself and my own daughter into high altitude, into an atmosphere that was similar to what killed my mother.
So how did your mother die?
My mother died from asphyxiation. She gassed herself in a vehicle in our backyard.
Right.
So she died from asphyxiation, and on Everest I discovered that the effects of high altitude sickness is similar to the effects of carbon monoxide poisoning.
How bizarre is that?
You get headaches, dizziness, vomiting.
So you pretty much experienced most of what your mum would have experienced in her last minutes.
Quite possibly, yes. And that rather freaked me out. But I had to stay strong.
Yeah. I love what you say in the book here about your mum. Where is it? When you mention your mum, Juliette, I'm lucky my mother gave me enough love to last my lifetime, and her death taught me how to live.
Oh, exactly.
To me, like, that puts goosebumps on the back. I just feel goosebumps all over me when I read that.
Yeah. And that's been one of my martyrs throughout my life. I learned gratitude at a very young age, 11 years old or even before, because I actually knew that my mother was going to die, because she told me. She told me, she didn't tell me. She told me that she wanted to walk into the sea and not come out. She said that she couldn't be here for my youngest sister's first birthday. She was saying all these things, so I knew that she was going to die, but I'd never heard of suicide. Yeah. Very naive 11-year-old, didn't know what was going on, but I knew that my mother was not going to be around for long.
Wow.
So therefore, I had gratitude for her being there, and every moment become more precious. Yeah. And that has stayed with me throughout life.
Was that only something she shared with you, or did she share those thoughts with any of your siblings? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think that she had mentioned things to other siblings, but we haven't really talked about it in depth.
I know you mentioned that you wondered whether it's a good thing to talk about grief and death, like if people are suicidal. Like you mentioned that you couldn't really do anything as an 11-year-old, but something that I saw was you had a couple of friends who did actually commit suicide, did they? Or someone that you spoke to about what struggles that they were going through, is it a good thing to talk about their struggles, or is it better just to avoid talking about it with them?
Yeah, it's a really hard thing because in society and in newspapers, suicide is often not talked about.
Yeah.
So, but I found that with my mother having died of suicide, and even up to almost present day, if the conversation comes up, have you got a mother? No. Oh, how did she die? Suicide.
Yeah.
Then there's no further conversation. People don't know how to deal with how to talk about suicide, let alone death. Death's bad enough, but suicide puts it up to another level.
Yeah.
And so it would be interesting if conversations could open up further. And in light of that, Prince Harry recently has talked about how he could not talk about his mother's death for 20 years. Yeah. And he's, royalty, fame, fortune, media and everything. Yeah. And he talked about how he couldn't talk about his mother's death. And I found myself thinking, well, I'm in a similar situation. I could not talk about my mother's death until recently, until I've written about my story in my book, Juliette's Angel.
Yeah, and I mean, up until this book, a lot of people would have thought your mum just died of a heart attack too.
Possibly.
And didn't realise what had actually happened to the whole family.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is, and something else that you wrote here, death is not to be feared, and there is no arguing with death. It happens. There comes a time in your life when past and present collide. Impermanence is life. Buddhism's first noble truth is the irrefutable fact that death cannot be denied. All life ends in death. And a Buddhist life is practice for death. I think that, that's what it is. All life ends in death, and it's something that I've had to contemplate with my own son, the reality of it, that we're all here and we're all going to die. I mean, you try to avoid that because everyone thinks they're invincible and that they'll just be here forever, which isn't the case. But I think talking about death and being open about it and it just being a part of our lives, and that something else is there for us. I mean, do you feel like your mother is still around with you at the moment?
Yes, I do. And I accepted her death at the time, I guess, because she prepared me in a way by talking about it.
Yeah, which is a blessing on its own.
It is, because I hadn't had that anguish over, what if and whatever, because I was only 11 years old, so I've never beaten myself up about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And, of course there's always whatever issues too, but that's not been a big axe to grind with me at all.
Yeah. Would you advise people that are going through grief and what you've been through to actually go on to travel around the world?
Travel is a great equaliser, and as I said earlier, it gets you out of your day-to-day box and headset. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with the world, taking your shoes off now and again and feeling Mother Earth underneath your feet, which is what we tend not to do today quite often.
So how did you feel writing this book and looking back on your life?
Oh, it was daunting. It was really, really daunting, because I had to think back, I had to feel every emotion, I had to reenact in my mind and every cell of my body the morning of her mother's death, the aftermath, the funeral. I had to stand literally, and watch my mother's coffin descend into the grave and watch the coffin and the roses disappear. I had to relive all of that.
Had you actually thought about that before, prior to writing the book?
No.
Yeah,
No,
so you
no.
just lived your life.
That's right.
And
yes. 'Cause
yeah.
I live, I've been living a quite a lovely life with my husband Johnny, with whom I met when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And, we've gone on to have a happy, successful life. But, there's always the undercurrent and the backstory of our mother's death.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've really relived that grief as an adult rather than as a child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Because grief doesn't go away if it needs to be addressed. Otherwise it just gets bottled up and it will reappear somewhere, somehow, whether physically, emotionally, and as for me, it reappeared on Everest.
Yeah. Well, if it's going to reappear anywhere, I suppose it's a pretty good place.
Well, pretty grand.
Spectacular place.
Very spectacular, yes.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of lessons on Everest, and I
Yeah.
learned how to let go. I learned how to accept my Sherpas. We had a Sherpa guide and porter. My Sherpa guide wanted to help me. He put out his hand, and I was thinking, can I do this? I was frozen in fear trying to cross the stream, and I took his hand.
Yeah.
I
You
accepted
trusted him. I
Yes.
think that's such a key thing and these people sound absolutely amazing. So
Yeah.
I think that we could learn a lot from just doing all of that, what you did. And then you actually went to Iceland afterwards that was a few years later, was it? When you went to
That was the
Iceland?
following year. Yes.
With your children, with all of them?
Went with two children, with Bonnie, who we climbed Everest with.
Yes.
Whom I climbed Everest with. Younger daughter Lucy.
Right.
Son Mitch stayed at home. We invited him along on this family tour, but he said no thanks.
Okay, before we go to Iceland, there was another quote here that I'm just quoting from your book. All my life I've accepted what is. Grief didn't spin in my galaxy as a child. Even before my mother died, I accepted that fact. I never experienced the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I bypassed all of those stages and shot straight to acceptance. Do you think that trekking through Everest, that you actually went through any of those other stages that you thought you had bypassed?
Everest raised a lot of issues for me, emotionally, and I think that was manifested in my inability to acclimatise.
Okay.
And in some other ways. So, yeah, if grief is not addressed and some of those emotions gone through, then it does come up later. But yeah, it came up for me on Everest.
Yeah. It would have been quite harrowing, all of that, to go through. I would imagine in such an isolated place too, but then grief is so personal, and so you would have been experiencing something your daughter would know nothing about really at the time, Bonnie.
Well, that's right, and it was even many years until I told her what actually happened to her grandmother, because with suicide, when they're children, it may not be age appropriate to talk about suicide. When they're teenagers, there's the concern of copycat behaviour.
Yep.
Should life become tough? And
yeah, you'd be worried that people think, well, that's an easy way out.
that's right. Well, Grandma did it. Well, because that can happen. That does happen, and it can happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did have a difficult conversation with my daughter on Everest regarding her grandmother's death.
Yeah.
But once again, I thought that I dealt with it, but I think that I still pushed it under the carpet a bit too.
Have you dealt with it now?
I think so. Because I've been forced to confront a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, reenact so many different of the stages and scenarios, her funeral and everything, with writing the book and rewriting as you do with a professional editor.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel more at peace with it all.
Yes.
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 It's yeah. I mean, your journey was trekking through Everest with grief. I mean, some people don't get that opportunity, but it's a different sort of trek for them. But you realise that you just have to go through those emotions to find that freedom and enjoy your life. Really.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I guess instead of a counsellor, I went to Everest.
Yeah. And then you went to Iceland with the 12 months afterwards with most of your kids.
Yeah, most of my children.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend Luana and her daughter, which was Bonnie's her daughter Sarah, which was Bonnie's best friend, and we were travelling as a bit of a family and friends group.
Yeah.
In a minivan.
Yeah.
But that was a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
Because all these adults sort of want to do
Yeah.
but different things.
And then volcanoes erupting and
volcanoes erupting, and there's bubbling lava and bubbling mud and glaciers and getting lost in the minivan and all sorts of things.
Anything I can say, Juliette, your life's definitely been adventurous. Oh dear! But you saw the Northern Lights.
We did see the Northern Lights. We were tripping around Iceland for about a week, or several days, and each night we were waiting to see the Northern Lights, and it didn't happen. And then on the last night, our last chance, the Northern Lights appeared as a bit of a green smudge, and we got excited and tried to take photographs. But of course, after one of the lessons learned from trekking Everest, I travelled light this time to Iceland, and so I didn't take a tripod. Big mistake.
Oh, no.
So all the photographs I was trying to take of the Northern Lights were dark and blurry, and it was just hopeless.
But you've got these photos. So did you put it on automatic, the camera, was it, later?
Right. Well, what happened was that it was about early hours of the morning. I'm outside our bungalow in the middle of Iceland in the middle of the night. Northern Lights are dancing overhead, and it all ramped up, and the Northern Lights
how beautiful.
had the pinks and the purples and the mauves and the greens, and just dancing
beautiful.
overhead, unlike hours earlier when it was just a smudge of green. And legends say that the Northern Lights are the spirits of unborn children playing in the heavens, or that they are or that they are torches held in the hands of wayward souls, directing them to the other side.
Right.
So all of these myths and legends are around me, and the lights are dancing. So I took the camera. I should have brought the camera with me. I had my son's camera. Didn't really know how to use it. I set the camera onto time release and set it on a little patio table outside with the lens facing to the sky.
Yeah. And then the next morning,
and
next year came up.
And
I don't
this
know
is the
if
result.
we can actually see this, but it looks like a pregnant woman. This is your angel. It's your mum.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy how that actually came out. That's just beautiful, Juliette.
That's right.
Absolutely
An angel
beautiful.
manifested in the camera lens, with the wings perfectly within the frame.
Yeah.
It's the right wing, the left, head and the hair blown back, the chest, the white soul, and pregnant stomach.
Yeah.
So the chances
Your
of that
mum.
happening, yeah.
It's just so beautiful.
And hence, that's why we've named the book Juliettes Angel.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. It's definitely a book of experiences and just how you can progress through life and find joy and adventure in your life again too. After such a hard thing to go through, losing your mum when you're 11 years old, and all of your siblings, and you've all been together lately, like to discuss any of this, or or talked about. You mentioned to me last time that you've discovered things about your mum that you didn't know before.
That's right. Yes, my brothers and sisters, we did get together. in recent times and
Yeah.
have actually, for the first time, discussed our mother's death.
Yeah.
And we've all talked about our own impressions and our own memories.
Yeah.
And that's quite healing. And that had been a long time coming.
Yeah. I mean,
Decades
a
later.
long time, but at least it's
Yeah.
happened finally. So,
yeah.
what I was going to mention too, at the back of your book, you talk about the people over there in Everest. Is there some way that they can, because there was in Nepal, there was a massive earthquake.
There was, what was that, about in 2015?
Yes, 2015.
There was the massive earthquake. Well, there were actually two earthquakes. There was a massive earthquake on the 25th of April, if I've got that date right,
Yeah.
and then another earthquake several days later.
Yeah.
And a lot of Everest, Kathmandu and surrounding villages were flattened.
Yeah.
And my Sherpa guide, Pratap, it was his turn to reach out for help. He was
Yeah.
frightened and he was fearing for his death as
Yeah.
buildings and shops and everything were collapsing around him.
Yeah. So you're trying to get more people to actually go over there and so that their tourist industry, support their tourist industry.
That's right, because because at the time he said to me, we are going to be loser for coming season.
Yeah.
And Pratap was right.
Yeah.
The industry collapsed, as well as the buildings, the tourism, the trekking. The trails are now open. A lot of buildings have been rebuilt, and Sherpas and guides are waiting for trekkers to show them their beautiful country.
Yeah.
So Nepal is open for business.
Okay. So it's a real struggle over there for them. With their tourist trade, they really need to make a living, don't they?
They do. The company that took Bonnie and myself on the trek, Keep Walking Nepal, they support their community and their health foundation in their villages and other villages.
Yeah.
So not only Keep Walking Nepal, but so many other trekking companies, shops, businesses, villages. They've got a lot to offer for people who love to travel or just to go and explore.
Yeah. Yeah, and people that are going through grief, maybe.
Yes. Go and trek Everest or go and trek around Nepal. It will be a life-changing experience because prior to my trek with Pratap and my the porter and guide and my daughter, I'd never planned to become an author.
So you followed your heart.
Well, my instinct, but I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, it's funny how things lead you to where you end up.
That's right.
And I believe you're writing another couple of books.
I am. Juliette's Angel is the first book in Juliette's World Memoir Trilogy.
Yep.
And the second book that we're writing now is called Castaway Great Barrier Reef.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm. And the third book, Honeymoon with My Sister.
Can't wait. They'll be really good. I mean,
they're all true stories.
Yeah, so these are all part of what you've gone through in your life.
That's right, yes.
I definitely highly recommend Juliette's Angel, Death, Desire, Destiny by Juliette Power. Great book, Juliette, and it's just fantastic to hear your story and what you've achieved in your life so far. Mm-hmm. So thanks so much for sharing with me today.
Thank you, Vicky.
Yeah, thank you.
Faith has wings.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it does. Thanks very much.